Lorenzo Noto, Italian Politics Journal Guinness. So Lorenzo, we will speak about the Mediterranean, and often we still think that the Mediterranean is an open sea. And my question would be, open to whom? Which means open for whom? Often commercially, who are the commercial actors? Who are the regional power that influence the Mediterranean, and the external strategies, the players that also influence our Mediterranean, our open sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mounir. Can you hear me? Yes. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in Koper to discuss critical topics like this. Thank you for your great speech. We call the sea the Mediterranean, the sea in the middle of the lands. However, from a geopolitical point of view, this name is no longer fully accurate because it hides a fundamental shift. We are at the center of a true global system. Since the opening of the Suez Canal more than a century and a half ago, the Mediterranean has stopped being an isolated basin. It has become a sea in the middle of the oceans, a middle ocean rather than a Mediterranean, the most critical maritime shortcut connecting the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific. Today we must realize that we can no longer make the mistake of considering the Mediterranean a closed sea. Instead, we must see it as a true global artery. Its existence depends entirely on a network of narrow passages or choke points: Gibraltar, Sicily Channel, the Turkish Straits, Suez. And this creates a dangerous condition. A global corridor only functions as long as every single one of its gates remains wide open. This second map, even if the data are a bit old, gives us a clear view of this dimension of the Mediterranean. This sea is not at the edge of the world. It is one of its main hinges. It is the exact place where the global trade route coming from Asia finds its shortcut toward Europe. For the countries facing these waters, such as Slovenia or Italy, this central position offers a major geographical, economic, and geopolitical advantage. However, this advantage can quickly turn into a threat. When these global routes are blocked, our centrality immediately becomes a massive vulnerability. And this is especially true for countries that depend exclusively on the Mediterranean for their maritime trade and don't have direct access to the Atlantic Ocean, unlike France, Spain, the Netherlands, or Germany. Therefore, having free and open seas, as stated by international maritime conventions, is not just a legal concept. It is a vital necessity for our development and well-being. For the last 8 years, the overwhelming power of the United States Armed Forces, and especially the Navy with its 7 fleets deployed across the planet, guaranteed the security of global waters and the principal choke points. And this was also true for the access points of the Mediterranean, which were constantly protected thanks to the American military presence between Europe and the Middle East, particularly with the 6th and the 5th fleets. But today, American strategic priorities are changing, and the US presence is shifting to war in the Pacific. The resources Washington is willing to use in the Mediterranean and in Europe are constantly decreasing. As this global umbrella shrinks, these critical maritime passages are no longer guaranteed. Instead, they are opening up dangerous spaces for competition, becoming geopolitical crises, zones of conflict and confrontation. And this is the context in which a permanent arc of instability has grown right in our backyard. If we use Koper, for example, as an observation tower to look at the world from the Adriatic Sea, we can see a continuous ring of instability around Europe. To the east, the war in Ukraine risks becoming a long-term conflict. To the southeast, tensions remain high between Turkey, Greece, and Cyprus, with the Middle East in a state of constant war just behind them. To the south, North Africa suffers from chronic instability, which is now amplified by the crisis in the Sahel region. Let's trace this arc starting at the Strait of Hormuz. The confrontation between Israel and Iran directly threatens the strategic triangle of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, and Suez. Beyond the brutal violence and the military confrontation, these commercial choke points are the ultimate geopolitical prize. Over decades, Iran has built a proxy network from Yemen to Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. And this network was never just about pressuring Israel. Its true purpose is to project power directly into the Mediterranean, giving Tehran the leverage to open or close these three vital gates at will. Controlling these passages allows Iran to leverage global trade as a strategic weapon, exactly as we saw during the escalation that began in February. On the other side, maritime security is also an existential issue for Israel. 98% of its trade goes by sea. Its economy depends entirely on its Mediterranean ports of Haifa and Ashdod, alongside Eilat on the Red Sea. Without free and secure access to the oceans, Israel would face economic strangulation. The vulnerability of this system became clear with the crisis in Bab el-Mandeb. Since the start of the war in Gaza, Houthi forces in Yemen have attacked the merchant ships in the Red Sea. These actions forced the major shipping companies to avoid the Suez Canal and redirect their vessels around Africa via the Cape of Good Hope. Even months after the main attacks, maritime traffic through Suez remained 60% below normal levels. And this means that when the big shipping lines decide to abandon a route, they reshape the geography of this sea more than any government can. And the lesson of the Red Sea is clear, I think. A small armored group using relatively cheap weapons can disrupt global trade, while sophisticated naval and military interventions manage to limit the damage. The capabilities and sheer determination of a single regional group proved how easily these vital global trade passages can be held hostage. Military power alone is extremely expensive and cannot permanently solve this security problem. And this means that in the future, a joint effort combining international political pressure and regional cooperation could prove to be a more effective path. Of course, we must face this with the awareness that it would require non-stop negotiations, that outcomes would often remain uncertain, and that the political dialogue would have to be constantly renewed. Because these maritime gates are unstable, nations are looking for alternative land corridors. Even if these routes cannot fully replace the sea, they reflect a deep strategic competition. The clearest example is IMEC, the India Middle East Europe corridor, conceived as the West's response to China's Belt and Road Initiative. This project is built around an India, Israel, and Arab Gulf states axis, completely excluding Turkey. As a result, Ankara strongly opposes it and is promoting its own alternative routes. And this demonstrates that a simple railway or a port is never just infrastructure. It is an instrument of power used to redraw alliances and shut out rivals. In addition to these choke points, the Mediterranean faces a second structural problem: conflicts over maritime borders and exclusive economic zones. This issue became intense after the discovery of large natural gas fields off the coast of Israel, Cyprus, and Egypt. Starting in the 2000s, Cyprus, Egypt, and Israel signed a series of agreements to define their maritime borders based on the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, the UNCLOS. Although Israel never ratified the convention, it accepted its principle to protect corporate investments. And these agreements excluded again Turkey and its own maritime claims, which also involve northern Cyprus, the Turkish part of the island, literally occupied by Ankara since 1974. So Turkey's reactions was immediate. Ankara introduced a new naval doctrine called Mavi Vatan, Homeland, which emphasizes Turkish maritime projection and military power in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean. When regional states created the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum and planned the EastMed pipeline to bring gas to Europe while bypassing Turkey, Ankara made a decisive countermove. In 2019, Turkey signed a maritime agreement with Libya, drawing a political border that disrupted the plans of Greece and Cyprus. And this led to serious naval tensions, with warships escorting drilling vessels in the disputed waters. And this demonstrates that even these economic and commercial agreements carry profound and unlikely intentional geopolitical consequences. Turkey's maritime ambitions extend far beyond its neighboring seas. Ankara is expanding its influence in Africa through two main pillars, Libya in the north and Somalia in the east, in both of which it maintains a strategic military presence. And the long-term goal is to build the corridors across the African continent to achieve direct access to the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, bypassing Gibraltar, Suez, and Bab el-Mandeb. And all these initiatives demonstrate that Turkey's presence across the wider Mediterranean system is now structural. Whether it is a partner or a rival for Europe, it reflects the exact same strategic pattern we saw with Iran and Israel. For all these actors, managing their deep dependence on the sea is absolutely vital. When a nation depends on the sea, it will do whatever it takes to prevent its gates from being closed. In conclusion, the growth of exclusive economic zones risks creating a territorialization of the sea, where states try to extend their national sovereignty over open waters. Without international cooperation, these border conflicts will combine with the threats at the choke points, and the risk is turning the Mediterranean from an open sea into a closed lake, just as it was before the opening of the Suez Canal 150 years ago. To prevent this, we must learn to cooperate, and our region, the Adriatic Sea, can serve as an example. The Adriatic is a Mediterranean within the Mediterranean, reflecting the old complexities of the wider basin. It is a meeting point of different cultures and political systems, and we could start right here by building a shared framework to cooperate on these issues. Unfortunately, today maritime openness is shifting from a legal right into a matter of power and geopolitical competition. Too often in the past, we have taken free navigation for granted, as if it were a permanent fact of nature. In the future, it will no longer be guaranteed by international institutions or the hegemony of a single country. It will be the result of a custom shared diplomatic work. Thank you very much.